So what's good, TMG fam? It's your boy Ellen. I'm back with another reaction. How y'all feel? Welcome back to the channel. Salute. So tonight, right? This is a topic. So let me start here. The title of the video is 3 Bizarre Cases of Revenge. Now, revenge is something that a lot of us struggle with. Why? Somebody do something to you, you want to do something to them. Do something to me, I want to do something back to you. You know what I mean? So we fight that urge. You know, maybe when I was younger, that urge was hard to fight. A little older now, you think about things in a different perspective. You know, how could this affect my family? What is this gonna do for me in the long run? You know what I mean? Can I check my emotions? So this is something that we tend to struggle with day by day, you know? There's you know, good guy on one shoulder, bad guy on the other shoulder. And sometimes the good guy is talking a little low and the bad guy is talking loud enough and he like, get him. You know what I mean? Get him. But we're gonna get into these 3 bizarre cases of revenge, man. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, join the fam. Real quick, moment of silence for the haters. That's enough. Now run the lights up. Let's get to the video.
Number 3, Carl Erickson. Norman Johnson was born in June 1939. He grew up in Madison, South Dakota, and he attended Madison High School. When he attended high school, the city only had a population of about 5,000 people. Norman was a star athlete. He was the starting running back for the school's football team. He was a popular young man, and he dated a cheerleader named Barbara. In 1958, the same year that Norman graduated from high school, he married Barbara. Norman went to university in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where he played football. He earned a degree in education. He would later attain his master's. After Norman graduated, he moved back to Madison. He got a job at his former high school as an English teacher and coach. He coached track, football, and tennis. Barbara went on to have 2 daughters. Norman was an active member of his church. He sang in the choir and he was an usher. Norman ended up teaching and coaching for 35 years, and then he retired. Norman and Barbara watched their daughters grow up. They went on to give them 4 grandchildren. On the night of January 31st, 2012, Norman and Barbara were at home. There was a knock at the door, and Norman answered it. The man at the door asked Norman if he was Norman Johnson. Norman didn't respond right away, so the man asked him again. Norman confirmed that was his name. The man at the door pulled out a .45 caliber handgun and shot Norman twice in the face. The 72-year-old grandfather died nearly instantly. Barbara found her husband of 54 years dead on the floor, and she called 911. She saw an elderly white man with gray hair and a beard walking away from the doorway. Madison was not used to dealing with murders. The last one happened over a century earlier in 1906.
So let me get this straight, y'all. You know, he started off football player, married his high school sweetheart, went to college, became a coach, moved back home, coached, had kids. They gave him grandkids. One day the door opens, he's shot. Of course, something's missing, right? It's something we're not seeing, but he don't give me the vibe of somebody other than maybe it's pointing to something to do with the wife. Only time a dude walk up and shoot you is if it's a woman involved, something like that.
The citizens left their keys in their car when they ran errands, and they didn't lock the doors of their homes. In the hours after the murder, the people in the town were on high alert. Many residents left their porch lights on to help the police in their search. Many officers who were involved in the investigation knew Norman because he had been their teacher in high school. Later that same night, the police were alerted that a man matching the description of the shooter was spotted at another home in Madison. It appeared that he was trying to break into the home. Like Norman, the homeowner was a retired teacher and coach at Madison High School. A short time later, the shooter was spotted near the home of Dick Erickson. Dick was a lawyer, and he had been a city councilman in Madison. Dick was not at home when the man was spotted. Dick was interviewed, and he said that he believed that his brother, 73-year-old Carl Erickson, was most likely the shooter. Dick said that Carl hated Norman Johnson because of an alleged incident that happened 50 years earlier when Carl and Norman were both students at Madison High School.
Yo, y'all really be holding on to grudges like that for something that happened in high school? High school. Come on now. High school, bro. You know, seriously, this dude done went to college, came home, had kids grew up to have kids, and gave them grandkids. And you still, what could have happened in high school? Now, granted, he was a football player, so, you know, football players, you do some things, you do some stuff, you be picking on people, you feel like you the top dog because you a football player, so. But bro, you held on to that from high school?
Norman was a year younger than Carl. Carl did not play any sports. Instead, he was a sports manager. Supposedly, one day in the locker room, someone put a jockstrap on Carl's head. This led to the boys on the team laughing at him. Dick did not know if Norman put the jockstrap on his head or if he did something like laugh the hardest. Regardless of what happened, Carl hated Norman because of the situation. Even 5 decades later, Carl talked about how much he loathed Norman. Dick was not sure why his brother would have gone to the other retired teacher's home. That teacher didn't attend high school with Carl and Norman. But Dick did know why Carl came by his home. Dick explained that his brother was mentally ill and he had been threatening to kill him for years. Dick thought it was possible that, because of Carl's mental illness, that the jockstrap incident may not have happened. He could have just made it up in his head. The police investigated Carl Erickson.
See, that's why we gotta take mental health very seriously, bro. Like, very, very seriously. And don't just brush it off and say it'll heal with time. This dude waited 50 years. This happened 50 years ago. Like, take it seriously.
In his background, he did not have a criminal record. After graduating from Madison High School, Carl went to university in North Dakota. He then moved to Wyoming. In 1968, Carl got married, and at the time of the shooting, he was still married. For 25 years, Carl worked as a federal government insurance officer. After he retired, he and his wife moved to Watertown, South Dakota. After talking to Dick, the police went to Carl's home in Watertown, which is over 60 miles from Madison. Carl admitted that he was in Madison on the day Norman was shot, and he did have his gun with him. But he denied killing Norman Johnson. The police got a search warrant, and inside Carl's home, they found the gun, which was determined to be the murder weapon. In May 2012, Carl Erickson pleaded guilty, but mentally ill, to second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. At the time of this video, 82-year-old Carl Erickson is incarcerated at the Jameson Annex in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Number 3. Alfred Uzo Jr. Prince Edward Island is Canada's smallest province. The island on the east coast is home to about 140,000 people. It's a picturesque and peaceful area famous for its potatoes and red sand beaches. It's best known as the setting for the beloved children's series Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery. On November 19, 1970, Alfred Uzo was driving on a rural road towards his home on the outskirts of Montague, which is a small town on the eastern part of the island. In the van was Alfred, his wife Bernice, their 9-year-old daughter Kathy, and their 2-year-old son, Alfred Jr., who went by the name Alfie. As they were driving through an intersection, a half-ton truck T-boned their van. Kathy went through the windshield. The police and an ambulance were called for. When the police officer arrived, he found Alfred walking around. He was injured and he had debris in his shoulder. Bernice was holding Alfie, the toddler. He looked around and he found the dead body of 9-year-old Kathy in the ditch. He then went to the truck and opened the door. Inside the cab of the truck was Herb McGuigan. Herb was uninjured and he was lying on the floor of his truck. He didn't appear to understand what was going on. He asked the officer if there had been an accident. On the floor of the cab of the truck were caps from beer bottles. Herb's eyes were watery and he smelled of alcohol. Herb was arrested and he was charged with drinking and driving. Alfred Uzo was taken to the hospital and he was released. The collision was a tragic situation. The police officer said that had either of the vehicles entered the intersection a second earlier or later, they would have never collided with each other. Kathy was buried in the cemetery beside the church that was close to the family's home. Anytime they drove into town, they passed the cemetery. A trial was held in 1971 and Herb pleaded not guilty. He was convicted and he was sentenced to just 9 months in jail and he was banned from driving for a year.
That's it?
The Uzo family was deeply upset by the sentence.
That's it? A year. People's lives lost. A year. Please, somebody, anybody, make that make sense to me. A year.
They thought it was way too lenient.
Thank you.
The death of Kathy and Herb's family was incredibly hard on the family. Alfred and Bernice began to drink and they argued frequently. Alfred spent time in a psychiatric hospital. Their son, Alfie, didn't fare much better. He had problems making friends in school. He failed the first grade and he had to redo it. He failed the 8th grade twice. He ended up dropping out of school when he was 15. Alfie worked at several menial jobs like a fish plant and he was on a road crew. He rarely dated, he never got married, and he never had children. At one time, he did live with a woman, but it didn't work out.
So how do we keep track of a person like this? Because you could already kind of somewhat get a sense of this person and what could possibly happen. Just based on how he proceeded through life after that.
In 2011, Albie's father, Alfred, passed away.
More hurt, more pain. You know what I mean?
In August 2014, Alfie was finishing up a contract as a night watchman at a marina. He was a loner, he was single, and his best friend was his dog. Herb McGuigan had a son named Brent. In August 2014, Brent was 68 years old. He was a father and a grandfather. On the night of August 20th, 2014, Brent was at home with his wife, Marie. That night, their son, 39-year-old Brendan, stopped off at their home. Brent had been fixing a backhoe, and Brendan wanted to see how it was going. Brendan wasn't planning on staying very long. He wanted to get home to his wife and his 3 children. They were planning on watching a TV show together. His wife was pregnant with their 4th child. At about 9 p.m., a man entered Brett and Marie's home through an unlocked door. The McGuigans had no clue who the man was. The man pulled out a .22 caliber handgun and pumped 7 bullets into 39-year-old Brendan. He then pointed the gun at Brendan's father, Brent. But then Brendan moved again, so the man shot him once more. The man then fired 5 bullets into 68-year-old Brent. After shooting both men, the man quietly walked out the door. Marie called 911 immediately. Sadly, nothing could be done for her husband and son. They were both pronounced dead. The next morning, the police received a call from a man named Jeremy Vuzo. He said that his brother, 46-year-old Alfie, had come to his home and told him he did it, he got them. Jeremy was born sometime after the accident. Jeremy explained that for years, Alfie had talked about getting revenge on the McGuigan family, but no one had taken him seriously.
What do you mean nobody took him serious? Like, what more do people, like, hello? He's telling you that was a real life traumatizing experience he went through. I think you should kind of take that serious. Look at his life. Relationships not working out, death getting to him. All he had was his dog. Hello? What else do you need to see or hear to take that serious? Even if you don't take it serious, even if you don't, what's wrong with making somebody aware, making authorities aware? You know what I'm saying? So they can kind of keep watch or set something up or at least notify the family.
Alfie was arrested at his home a short time later. While he was in custody, Alfie talked to a psychiatrist. He blamed the McGuigan family for ruining his life. He decided to get revenge by killing Brent McGuigan. The psychiatrist diagnosed Alfie with pervasive depressive disorder and obsessive compulsive personality disorder.
I was just about to say that. You probably know it was a lot of different things going on in his head. You know what I mean? Feeling like voices, the depression, the feeling like if this didn't happen in my life would be better. Now every time something does happen or go wrong, you reference that again, and it just keeps building and building. It's like a snowball. As it rolls, it keeps getting bigger and bigger. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody should have intervened, man. This is sad.
The psychiatrist said that people with this combination of disorders are generally unforgiving and moralistic and tend to brood or obsess over issues. Alvy said that he had not expected Brendan to be there, but decided to kill him regardless. Since the collision happened 44 years earlier, 5 years before Brendan was born, there was a possibility that Brendan never even knew about the accident. The McGuigan family didn't know who Alfie was. Only one member of the McGuigan family remembered having a run-in with the Vuzo family after the collision. That was Herb's other son, Ivan McGuigan. Ivan said that one time at a dance at the Legion Hall, Bernice, Alvy's mother, slapped him and told him that his father, Herb, was an awful person. Ivan also said that one time he had worked with Alfie's father, Alfred Sr., on a job and they had gotten along. In February 2015, Alfie Vuzo pleaded guilty to first-degree murder for killing Brent and second-degree murder for murdering Brendan. In April 2015, there was a sentencing hearing and it was contentious. The prosecution argued that Alfie should have to wait 50 years before he could apply for parole. Alfie testified. He slammed the 9-month sentence that Herb McGuigan received for killing his sister 44 years earlier. He said that's all her life was worth. She only had 9 years in this world, and nobody cared. It's haunted me all my life. Marie, who was Brent's wife and Brendan's mother, testified. She said, I feel so much anger and hatred that it scares me. I hate that they died this way, and it haunts me. Marie was allowed to directly address Alfie. She asked him why he didn't kill her. Alfie told her that was because she was a woman. After this comment, Brent's second son,
Meaning, he thought about it, he contemplated it. That right there should tell you a lot.
Brendan's brother, Alan, said, I won't go easy on your mother, bud. There won't be a Vuzo left alive at Montague, sucker. Alfie responded, I'll remember that. Alan was promptly kicked out of the courtroom for the comment. Alfie ended up being given 2 life sentences without the chance of parole until he served 35 years. That means he'll be able to apply for parole for the first time when he's 81 years old. After Alfie was sentenced, he flipped out. At the family of his victims, he shouted, You sentenced me to life, and I set them to death. As he was being led out of the courtroom, he screamed, You guys, at the McGuigans. The murders had devastating effects on both the McGuigan and Vuzo families. Brendan's wife gave birth to their 4th child 4 months after he was murdered. She ended up selling their home and moving away from the area because she thought that the house was too lonely without Brandon. Alvy's mother also
I would have wanted to get like far away from that town, period.
sold her home and moved away. The double murder is considered one of the most notorious homicides in the history of Prince Edward Island. Number 1, Anthony Garcia. William and Claire Hunter lived in an upscale neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska. William and Claire were doctors, and they worked at the Creighton University Medical Center. Claire was a cardiologist, and William was the head of the pathology residency program. The couple had 4 sons. On March 13, 2008, Claire was out of town at a conference. William finished work at around 5 p.m. and then he drove home. When William arrived home, he noticed something odd. The car belonging to their housekeeper, Shirley Sherman, was parked in the driveway. She was usually gone by the time he arrived home. Nevertheless, William walked in the back door of the house. A few steps from the door, he found the dead body of 57-year-old Shirley Sherman. Her body was in a pool of blood, and a knife was embedded in her neck.
Ooh.
It was clear that she was dead. In a panic, William searched the rest of the house. His youngest son, 11-year-old Thomas, was the only one who still lived at home. He was 8 years younger than his next oldest sibling. On the dining room floor, William found the dead body of his 11-year-old son, Thomas. Like Sherman, there was a knife embedded in his neck.
What?
It was later determined that Sherman had been stabbed 17 times before the knife was left in her neck. Thomas had also been stabbed multiple times. The stab wounds on both victims were in small clusters on the right side of their necks, below the ear and jawline.
Why?
It appeared that the killer was trying to cut or stab their jugular vein or carotid artery. Both knives came from the family's kitchen. It's believed that when Thomas got home, he went into the basement to play video games. The killer came to the front door and Thomas let him in. The killer made his way to the kitchen and picked up the knives. Thomas most likely ran and the killer tackled him in the dining room. He then proceeded to stab him. Shirley Sherman was upstairs cleaning when this happened. She may have heard the noises of the attack and came downstairs to investigate. She most likely saw the killer, possibly in the process of murdering Thomas, so she ran towards the back door. The killer chased her and tackled her, and then stabbed her to death. The police had no idea who would want to kill the 11-year-old 6th grader and the family's housekeeper. Nothing had been stolen from the home, and neither victim had been sexually assaulted. Thomas was a bright young man who attended a magnet school for science and technology. He loved video games and books. He wasn't involved in any dangerous behavior like gangs or drugs. Shirley Sherman had a former boyfriend who was abusive, but he was cleared as a suspect. Several people saw a silver Honda CR-V near the crime scene. The police followed up on this lead, but it did not go anywhere. The detectives working on the case asked the FBI for assistance. They suggested it could have been the work of a serial killing drifter and the murders were just random.
Random. 17 times stabbing. That's random, huh? I just can't say that's random. And the housekeeper?
It wasn't long before the case went cold. On the morning of May 14, 2014, the police were called to another upscale home in Omaha. It had been over 5 years since Thomas Hunter and Shirley Sherman were killed. Some piano movers had found the bodies of Roger and Mary Brumbach, who were both 65. The Brumbachs were packing up to move to a different state. Roger was just a few weeks away from retirement. He was the head of pathology at the Crane University Medical Center. He was the colleague of Thomas Hunter's father, William. The couple had been murdered 2 days earlier on Mother's Day. It's believed that Roger opened the door to the killer, who was armed with a gun. Roger and the killer struggled with the gun, and the killer managed to fire off 4 shots. Roger was hit 3 times. One of the bullets, which entered his abdomen, was fatal. After the 4 shots were fired, the clip fell out of the gun. It is believed that Mary was drawn to the front door by the sounds of the attack. The killer then proceeded to pistol whip Mary until the gun broke. Then the killer went into the kitchen and grabbed 2 knives. He returned, and Mary fought off the attacker the best she could. There were 20 defensive wounds on her hands and arms. She was stabbed 6 times on the right side of the neck. One of the stabs cut her carotid artery. The killer then walked over to Roger and stabbed him 6 times on the right side of the neck. He left both knives on the floor. Nothing was stolen from the home, and there were no signs of sexual assault. The police immediately thought that the sets of murders were connected. Both had been double murders, and all 4 victims were stabbed in the right side of the neck. They also had connections to the Crane University Medical Center. Specifically, Roger was a member of the pathology department, as was Thomas's father, William. The murders of the Brungbacks made it clear that it wasn't some serial killer choosing victims at random. Instead, the killer appeared to be targeting members of the pathology department.
Right.
Hours after the Brungbacks' bodies were found, the police learned something that confirmed that theory. Another doctor who worked in the pathology department told the police that on the same day the Brungbacks were killed, someone tried to break into her home. No one was home at the time, and she thought that the security alarm scared them off. The crimes made no sense to the investigators. Why would someone want to hurt the members of the Crane University Medical Center's pathology department? Pathologists examined dead bodies. So it's not like one of them botched some procedure or surgery that killed someone's loved one or something of that nature. The police began to suspect that the killer had medical training. They thought that the killer's stabbing method was methodical. He seemed to be aiming for the jugular vein or the carotid artery, and if they were cut, it would be fatal in under a minute. The police did not find the killer's fingerprints at either crime scene. So the police thought that the killer may have worn medical gloves. After the murders of the Brungbacks, a task force was formed, and the FBI became heavily involved in the investigation. The investigators started going through the medical center's personnel files. In the personnel files, they found a possible suspect, 40-year-old Anthony Garcia. Garcia had been a resident in 2000, 13 years before the Brungbacks were killed. Garcia had a lot of problems in the program. He was considered immature, defiant, and for someone who went to medical school, he had a surprising lack of knowledge. He never took responsibility for his actions, and his problems were always caused by someone else. The final straw was a prank that Garcia pulled. While the chief resident was taking an exam, Garcia had another student call the chief resident's wife. He told the chief resident's wife that her husband was needed at the medical center right away, or he'd be fired. William Hunter and Roger Brungback considered the prank harassment, so Garcia was dismissed from the program. He was just 11 months into the 4-year program. Garcia's termination letter was signed by William Hunter and Roger Brungback.
So the 2 people that quote unquote, as he probably would have said, cost him his career, instead of taking responsibility for his action, and they just carried out an action or a reaction to his action. You know what I mean? Hope that wasn't too confusing, but basically saying for his action, their reaction was to kick him out of the program, and he probably didn't take it well. Like, people are crazy, bro.
The police then looked into Garcia's background. He had a criminal record for driving under the influence. That was it. What caught the attention of the investigators was that Garcia owned a silver Honda CR-V.
Got him. The vehicle. I forgot all about that.
when Thomas Hunter and Shirley Sherman were killed. It turned out that being dismissed from the program had caused a lot of problems for Garcia. Whenever Garcia applied for jobs in the medical field, he was always asked if he had been fired from a residency program or disciplined in a residency program. He would respond yes, and then he wouldn't get the job. Or he would lie, then get the job, only to be fired later. In February 2008, Anthony was fired from Louisiana State University for omitting that he had been fired from Creighton. 2 weeks later, Thomas Hunter and Shirley Sherman were stabbed to death. In December 2012, about 5 months before the Brungbacks were killed, Garcia was denied a medical license from the Indiana Licensing Board. The police concluded that Anthony
I bet he thought he was gonna get away with it. Thought he was smart.
Garcia was seeking revenge on the people who fired him in 2001, 7 years before the first murders were committed. The investigators needed...
Look at his face. That look like somebody y'all would have suspected? Nah, him? Nah. He might have acted like it, but he don't. That's why I say, bro, you just can't profile somebody and think that they're cool enough for you to hang around or, they seem like a nice guy. Those be the ones.
Murders were committed. The investigators needed to prove that Garcia was in Omaha on the day that either set of murders happened. The police thought that since there were so many similarities between the murders, that it was clear that one person committed them. When the first murders were committed, Garcia was living in Shreveport, Louisiana. When the Brungbacks were killed, he was living in Terre Haute, Indiana. The investigators got a hold of Garcia's phone records. It turned out his phone was used near Omaha on the day the Brungbacks were killed. They also got Garcia's financial records. 2 months before the Brungbacks were killed, Garcia purchased the same olive gun used to shoot Roger with his credit card.
Got him.
They also found out that Garcia's credit cards were used to make several purchases in Omaha on the day the Brungbacks were murdered.
Got him.
One purchase was made at a convenience store and another one was made at a restaurant. The restaurant was just a few blocks from the Brungbacks' house. The investigators went to the convenience store and they got the surveillance footage from that day. Garcia was recorded on tape at the store. This proved Garcia was in Omaha and he could claim that someone stole his credit card and phone.
Bro, he looked different there. He looked different than that picture they showed us. Look at him now. I ain't gonna lie, his eyes look black and murdered out. Look like he can actually, like, he's serious about what he finna do.
On July 15, 2013, 40-year-old Anthony Garcia was arrested. Garcia went to trial 3 years later in October 2016. After a 3-week trial, the jury deliberated for 6 hours over 2 days. Garcia was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder. In the lead up to his trial, Garcia didn't talk to his lawyers or his family. At his sentencing hearing in September 2018, he sat in his wheelchair and either slept or pretended to sleep. He was
trying to go for insanity. Look at him. Trying to, like, really laying into it.
Sentenced to death. 47-year-old Anthony Garcia is sitting on death row at the Tecumseh State Correctional Institution in Tecumseh, Nebraska. No execution date has been set. Thank you so much for watching.
Fam. A firing sent him off the deep end like that. Most of us would have been like, we'd have been upset. We'd have thought what we did was stupid, idiotic, and we'd have been like, all right, now we got to figure this thing out because that we're no longer able to pursue that dream. Him, though, you see where he took it, though, somewhere completely different, fam. And those people didn't deserve to go out like that, man. Scary, scary. So everyday people like you and I that could really do and commit such heinous acts. Scary, scary, scary. And towns like, you know what I mean, you and me live in. Y'all, listen, man, be careful, be safe. And y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what you think, man. Stick around and stay tuned to the next one. I'm gone. Peace.